Hey folks, good evening and welcome to Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials for another Tale from the Combat Commander ladder. We're doing something a little different this month. I've had my match from this month. However, my opponent, who is the fantastic player Lefty Brune, he has confessed to being a little shy. So rather than recording our live event, I went ahead and recorded our vassal session in a vlog file, in a vassal log, and I'm going to play through it tonight. I'm just going to give you sort of the DVD commentary of what happened during our event. So stick around. This should be a little bit shorter than the actual match itself. I will use editing to cut out some parts that aren't really necessary or germane to the action and try to distill it down to just the main parts of the playback. The good thing about this is that I can stop and catch my breath, take a drink of water. This is the method that I use for whenever I do a tutorial video, and this helps me kind of keep my thoughts going on. But this is nice because then I can, as a football color commentator would do, I can kind of watch and see what cards are played and then comment on what was happening, what I was thinking, and how Lefty was reacting. And this should give you a pretty good sense of what happened during the live session. So, as I said, a little bit different tonight, but I think you'll enjoy it all the same. For this month's scenario, we were at the Stalingrad Battlepack. For those of you who are not familiar, let me give you once again the invitation to follow the link that is there in the information section of this YouTube video and join us on the Combat Commander ladder. You don't have to play with Vassal, although that is the primary tool that most of us use, but you could also play on Tabletop Simulator if that is of interest to you. But what we do is we pair up people of all different experience levels. When you join, you will come in with an average rating. We will assign a rating to you, and you will earn points and rating points that will give you a better idea of your skill level as opposed to your opponents each and every month. And from each month to month, we go through each and every one of the released battle packs and base sets for all of the Combat Commander Universe game system. Starting with Europe, that's our June, and then we just go in order of publication all the way through. The only adjustment we've done is where we do the Pacific and then the New Guinea battle pack. We do that back to back late in the year, just so that people, once you switch gears over into that different system, it gives you 2 months back to back, so you don't completely jarred out of your European understanding of how that game system works and then over to Pacific, then back. So having 2 months gives us a little bit more consistency, which the players seem to appreciate. For our scenario this month, as I said, it came from the Stalingrad Battlepack, and as random chance would have it, a random draw for the scenario selection was scenario number 35, which is the Spartakovka Salient. And you can see it here with all of this. Lefty was playing the Allies, so he is the Soviets on the left side of the map. And I was playing the German forces, the Axis forces, on the right side of the map. This scenario is the first one in the Stalingrad Battlepack, which means that, like Fat Lipke in the beginning of the base Europe game system, they try to keep things simple to ease you into all of the nuances that will be introduced into Stalingrad. There were several new things like urban rubble, urban snipers. Let's see what else. We had some of the cover changes that would go on to become part of the Pacific theater. So many of the rules that were introduced in Stalingrad would then go on to evolve into some of the base features of Pacific. And I think that's why a lot of players like it. I certainly appreciate many of them as well. So I think this is a great one if you are obviously new to Combat Commander. This is one of the battle packs. You can also start with this particular scenario without being too unfamiliar with the rules. One of the other things I'm hoping to do tonight with this video is to practice playing with some of the new tools and features that have just recently been introduced into the software that I use. There are some drawing tools that I can take advantage of and try to put things into the video and see how they go. I don't know if you can see that. I'll see that on playback perhaps, but this is just squiggles that I'm doing, random squiggles with the red line. And I hope it does actually show up in the video. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and step through this video. You guys won't see it, but I will be taking the pauses to step through bits and pieces of it just to make sure that my thoughts are organized when I describe what the action is that's about to take place. One of the fun features of this particular scenario is that it utilizes map number 1 from the Europe base map. So this is what many consider to be the Fat Lipke map, where we've got a whole variety of very simple terrain, from farmhouses here, we've got the fields, we've got fences, and we've got a very prominent series of forests. We've got trails through the forest, we've got orchards, and we've got roadways. So a little smattering of all the different basic terrain types to get players used to Combat Commander. Obviously, in Fat Lipke, it is your first experience with them, but now you're taking advantage of a different alignment, a different setup, and I think this is a fun map. Of course, we got the lake right here in the middle, which is impassable. But I really enjoy this map. It's always a fun one when this is utilized in the random scenario generator, because just depending on the various setup points that you use and which way the Axis and allies are defending the map, it can lead to all kinds of fun experiences. So this is going to be raw and gritty. I apologize for the roughness of it, the crudity of this model, Marty. I'm going to step through the bits and pieces of it. I think the first part here I may just skip right over the setup, if that was recorded in the log file, and we'll just go right to it. The first thing we of course had to do was to draw our objectives. We had the open objective prescribed for this scenario, which is that exit points are doubled, and then Lefty drew his allied objectives, which was, unfortunately for him, a public one, which is elimination points are double. So right off the bat, we have a very intriguing combination here where most of your basic operations and goals of this game, aside from capturing victory point locations, are focusing on manpower activities, either side getting off the map or killing each other outright. So even though, for those of you who are not familiar, even though that is listed as an allied objective, because it is not a secret one, it is public, so that means both sides will get the benefit of that throughout the entire game. So when we saw this, we were like, uh-oh, that really changes what we're going to do. So this did affect our setup just a bit. And then next I drew objective P, which said that this farmhouse here, this building, this home, whatever it is officially, is worth 4 extra victory points for the Germans should I be able to capture it. And that's going to be pretty tricky because we see that all 4 of the objectives, other than objective 4 of the 5, is under Soviet control. So without a doubt, because this whole area here up to 8 or 9 hexes deep is the Soviet setup area. So knowing Lefty as I did, I was presuming that this was going to be a hardened position, that he was going to set up probably a significant force guarding that building, even though he had no knowledge of my drawing this particular objective chit. And sure enough, Lefty did indeed. You could see his initial setup here. He put quite a sizable force here with his leadership into this house. So he had Lieutenant Galikovich and a light machine gun and the medium machine gun with the rifle squad there. And he had Corporal Gordov over here in the woods. So he's got 2 individual commanded units, and then he's got a smattering of his weaker militia forces grabbing just these objective spots. Because of that, I decided to set up this way, where I had my 2 forces separated a little bit. I wasn't quite sure how far I wanted to move them. I knew that I was going to attempt some flanking, obviously the exit points being the primary focus, but having now the other objective of the double points for elimination, this gave me the opportunity to set up a couple of sizable forces here. So I put Schrader and his crew down here with the light mortar. Unfortunately, that light mortar really is a millstone because I have it with the weapon team, and it's a bear to drag around this battlefield, and it is of limited usage until you get it into a nice straight line of visibility. So I wasn't quite sure how I was going to handle that light mortar. And then up here I had Corporal Rettenhouse with his forces. Some of them I was planning on keeping into this farmhouse here to guard it, and the rest of them I was going to try to do some kind of probing force to the north side of the map here, perhaps through these forces. So ultimately my goal was to do something like this. I'd send them around a sweeping force, avoiding most of the contact, and then getting off the map here. The other possibility I was trying to do was to get a large force somewhere down here, perhaps utilizing the road, either to capture this objective and then perhaps move their way off. These are, of course, initial plans, and they never survive first contact with the enemy. So it was going to be a lot of fun to see how I would succeed or fail against a very, very strong player that is Lefty. So we will continue on, and we will start playing the first few cards here. You will hear the sound effects. I may turn them down a little bit, and I hope you enjoy. One of the other things I'm going to do in this particular playback, just to maintain some of the mystery and suspense, is I'm not going to show you my German hand of cards. You will get to see them as the orders are played, and we'll talk about them as I bring them out. But that way, we'll keep you in suspense a little bit, I hope. So first up, I activated Corporal Rittenhouse and his contingent here around him, and as I pointed out earlier, my goal was to kind of make a northern progress up perhaps through the woods there, or at least get into the woods, and either blunt Gordov's attempts to come through and try to get off the map himself, or, if possible, to get around and move up through the forest as quickly as possible. So, as you can see, I make some moves forward here, and I get them with their extra command leadership to get them through the orchard and into the forest there, and then bringing up the light machine gun alongside. And I'll leave the rifle squad there in the house just as a rear guard for anybody trying to come through the woods and get off the map. That order is completed, so just one and done for that. Resetting, and Lefty decided he was going to discard. So what you'll see here early on in the game is a lot of discarding, with a defender having only 4 cards, and with Germans, if you don't have a good hand requiring, obviously this requires a lot of movement, so if I didn't have, I don't remember if I had move cards or not, but I was not going to sit there and play the game where I'm just constantly trying to force something that wasn't going to happen. So I wanted to take my time, get these units into place, because playing against a very, very experienced player, I did not want to expose any potential weaknesses that he could exploit. You know, war games. So I let him discard his cards, and he drew a couple, and then I decided to play an advance order. So it's very easy to move that unit and the associated squad next to it into the forest. He, however, took advantage of that and decided that I had stumbled into a minefield there in the forest. So watch your feet, Rittenhouse and squad. So he gets a mine attack there in that minefield. He would draw a very, very powerful 11 with the 6 associated on the mine. So that gives him a 17 attack with no cover, of course. This was pretty dangerous right out of the gate. He got me with the most fun things that I like playing as a defender are all of those wonderful hidden traps and things. And yet, even as the attacker, I oftentimes fall for it, just thinking, hey, I can charge right into the woods, and you can see what happened here. So I take the first defense using I always go from squad up to leader, and both of them are going to fail because 17 is very difficult when you've got no cover. They're immediately trapped in the woods there because of that minefield. They can't go forward and they can't go back, and they're in a pretty tough spot at this moment. So now I'm starting to panic myself. I've got a very stout leader and his unit stuck, and I can't do anything about it. So I just drew up, and he, as you would expect, took advantage, and he fired. He activated the entirety of his squads within range and attacked the adjacent from that rifle squad there. So Rittenhouse and his squad hopefully can survive this, but luckily he rolled pretty low. So we got our first event, and that is the opportunity to draw an open objective chit. So this became very tantamount to our game here. Now it says that every one of the 5 objectives is worth 2 victory points. And because of that, he now controls 8, and I control 2 victory points worth. So a net 6 victory points are added to the Soviets, and you can see that up here. So he's going to jump right up to 17 from his 11 starting point. Now I'm getting into a hole a little bit, and I got to work hard to get out of that. And I rolled a 2. That's pretty pathetic rolling, so luckily that was enough to just suppress him. So he ended that fire order, reset, drew a card, and now it was my turn to try to fire. So I just fired using those guys, right addition, and we get into this little prolonged firefight in the woods there, just back and forth. And I believe, yes, I threw in some hand grenades since we were right next door. I roll pretty good for that. It gives me a 15 attack, and it was not enough to break him, but at least it got some cards out of my hand. So then I drew back and sent it to him. He decided, again, we will continue the firefight there in the North Woods. He attacks, gets a very low roll, causes me to draw some cards. So one of the things as new players should learn is that defenders, because they control the clock, if they can, it usually is in their best interest to force card draws from both sides, but ultimately you want to just get cards moving because you can attempt to trigger time, right? That could always come up in the decks, but you also can flush out cards that will drive the decks down and cause the game clock to move faster. And obviously Lefty is no stranger to this, and that's exactly what he's doing. Any opportunity to have multiple units pulling cards, that's what he's going to be trying to do. So sure enough, he gets me to draw a couple of cards, no net effect, but I'm certainly not going anywhere. So he drew back up, and this is where I began my campaign of just discarding cards because I had a handful of rout cards and crap, and it was just not helping me move. I had to move or get some fire cards, or best of all, a recover would have been really nice here. So I draw back up, hoping for my luck, and he continues a firing. And that's exactly what he does. Gets 12 here. Luckily, these are very nice rolls, and I'm in decent cover with leadership, but it's starting to wear them away. And he's causing me to use my good cards that could be used for attacks to come up. So I'm going to show you here. Got a sniper, our first sniper, and it was way off in G1, so it was not helpful at all. Way up there you can see with the blue marker. He's just trying this prolonged defensive tactic of causing me to discard cards. I, on the other hand, especially when I'm playing the attacker in close quarters like this, I don't typically like to engage in firefights. It's oftentimes just throwing lead at it, and it serves, to me, no particular purpose unless you're attacking with a significant force. If you've got a kill stack and you want to try to get them all broken, then certainly that, by all means, you want to try that. But any other time for that, when you're the attacker, you need to just be constantly in motion, striving to get across the map if you can, or at the very least, trying to take high value targets. But luckily, I got a move card. So the Northwoods group there, that northern contingent, is stuck because until I get a recover, I can't move them. So now it's time to start moving Schrader. I inadvertently failed to activate all of them with the halos, but I got him moving nonetheless. And I just moved him a little bit forward to see, just to see what was going on down the road there a bit. And Lefty decides to respond in kind, but to my chagrin, he opts to go for a true blocking maneuver, and he went right up there to better position Gordov and his forces to prevent me from going any way forward. At this point, I'd have to go all the way up and around through these woods, taking fire all the time, being adjacent, and that was not a tenable situation for me. So that made me have to adapt and rethink my strategy for this particular group. And as you can see, he's even going for a surround here. So I realized quickly that Rittenhouse's luck up here is quickly running out, so I need to do something to get him out of this very precarious situation. It was all academic until I can get a recover card, of course. So the only tool I had in my toolkit at this point was to advance. I had to get him away from Gordov at the very least, so sure enough, I moved them out of the mines, but they are going to suffer another mine attack here. That's 2 more cards that I have to draw, and luckily, he drew very, very poorly for this, so I was happy about that. So he drew a 9, I draw a couple, and they survive. So at least they're out of the minefield, and now that minefield also presents an obstacle or a barrier to Gordov, preventing him from coming directly at both of those units. So that was helpful too. And the firing continues. Now he's still got a unit adjacent to me, so he can constantly press and maintain contact and get me to draw a couple of cards. They are, again, low rolls. He was lamenting out loud about not being able to get a very high strike on me, but I was secretly very happy. I wasn't secretly, I was actually very happy in front of him, so I was like, whew! Okay, so they both survive, and this is going to keep going back and forth. I decide to play another advance, and because that Rittenhouse is broken, he can't get the light machine gun crew up there. He can't activate them as well, but at least I could get these forces now out of direct contact from adjacency. And that was my ultimate goal, to at least prolong things a little bit, because the longer he was making me draw these cards, that was getting very, very troublesome for me. So I draw back up, and this is once again now commencing a series of discards and draws for the Soviets. But at least now I could do a fire order, so I activate Schrader to at least just throw a little bit of lead towards the militia down there at Objective 3. So I get an event, and my event is the very timely arrival of Dietl, the German hero. So he comes on, and because I put him up there with a unit, he could rally one of the two, sadly not both. So I decided that since he's a leader, I went ahead and rallied the squad. And that gave me at least some options that I could work with Dietl and take some of the pressure off of Rittenhouse for now, because he's probably got a pretty good chance of rallying if I ever get a recover card. We'll see if that happens. And so his defense was fine, got a sniper of no benefit to either side. Again, these are very short staccato kind of orders, just onesie twosies, until I can get something moving here. So early on it was very hard. And also the Soviets are tied to the time track for their orders, and starting at 0, time track 0, they only have 1 order, so he was kind of hamstrung with that, and he would not get more orders until he moved forward on the time track. So he attempts to rout some of these broken units, or at least Rittenhouse by himself. He does not get a good roll, so Rittenhouse is fine. And then this is where I start discarding for my life, just trying to get something back. Checking line of sight. And he decides to move that militia out of danger from Schrader's firing. And I discard some more. He draws some more and discards. We just back and forth on discarding. And then he decides he's going to do an advance. And this is where I started to sweat even more. I really didn't know where he was going to be going. And luckily, what he was attempting to do here is just get that militia in a linking position, I guess, or at least get him into range of his other leader here for something with Gulekovich. And finally, I got a move order. So this, because he had abandoned Objective 3, I figured this was the time to make a break with Schrader. So my big choice here was, do I go through the woods first and then across the road at the closest point, or do I try to cross the road first and then go through the woods? Really, to many people, 6 of one, half does the other, but because it's sort of a probing attack or a probing movement, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't get shot before we even get to the other side of the road. Why did the German cross the road? So he wouldn't get shot. And so I decided to go through the woods first and just see if he was going to do any kind of opportunity fire. And I was going to go as close as I could. And that's where he checked line of sight a couple times. And I decided to stop at that point. So I drew back up. He advances, gets that unit behind now, so it's out of line of sight. And he draws. And then I discard a couple of cards. He discards a couple of cards. We go back and forth. And many people who play this, who are new at this, or look from the outside into Combat Commander, they're trying to gauge whether or not their interest would be there. Is they often say to me when they're looking over my shoulder, "Boy, you're discarding a lot." And that's true. It is a card game. It's a card-driven game. And you have limited options if you are not willing to cycle your deck a little bit. So yes, some scenarios you're going to be just throwing away a lot of trash, especially if I've got a handful of cards that are very defender specific, or they're artillery requests and I have no radio. All of that, if you can't utilize the actions for some benefit, then you just need to get all of that detritus out of your hand. So, and that's what he and I are doing here. Just a lot of cycling till we finally get to, I get another move card, which is exactly what I need. So now is the moment that Schrader decided it's time to get across that road. And so I take one step forward first, see what he's going to do. And yes, the moment I expected, he utilizes opportunity fire here. So if things go poorly, at least Schrader is in cover and stuck here should they break. So he fires up Galekovich and that whole crew, gets a very decent roll of 17. And guess what happens? I don't. So the squad panics. And Schrader, luckily though, he has a decent roll, so he's not going to break, but he also gets to call a sniper, which shoots that militia very timely there at F8. So they break. And that's where we stop, because we have not enough movement to go forward, and I need to recover them. And luckily, I had drawn a recover card. So now I've got a couple opportunities to repair some units, rally them. The first one is removes the suppression marker, and he rallies. Of course, also getting a sniper. So my other sniper here has a very good clean shot on Corporal Gordov, which is great. It's exactly what I needed to slow him down a little bit. So I rally that squad up there, or under Schrader rather. And then when I was doing Rittenhouse, he gets an event, which is interrogation. So I got to see Lefty's hand, and I believe there was a fire card there that I forced him to throw away, and Rittenhouse also rallies. So this was a very good recover for me. I was starting to sweat, but things are starting to go pretty well. So at this point, and I simply draw back up, having successfully rallied my units. It was time to start figuring out what the next step of my plan was going to be. He responds with some discards, and I decide to get things moving with Schrader yet again. So of course we get that unit moving, and I'm hoping he doesn't have a fire card, and I was lucky in that he didn't, or he opted not to play it. So Schrader successfully moves over to objective 3, converting it, and now because of the extra value of that, they're now worth 2 victory points each. So that's a 4-point swing, so I take it down to 13. Because of the timing aspect of this, it's very hard for the attacker to breathe any kind of sigh of relief. Well, for me, it's not until I get it under maybe 5 victory points for the defender that, or the opponent, that I can actually breathe a little easier. So I'm hoping at this point that the next couple time triggers are going to go quickly, because I really need that extra stack of von Karsties and the reinforcements that he's going to bring on. Some of them are elites. And since I was feeling pretty good about capturing that space, I decided that one order was sufficient and I move on. but I can tell when Lefty starts looking at the line of sight that something's about to happen here. And he decides he's going to advance that militia out of firing range and get them behind that wall of forest just for a little bit of safety. And that's pretty smart, because I was just about to take a shot at them and hopefully eliminate that unit. And Schrader's feeling pretty full of himself. He decides he's going to press and see if he can't move out of this objective hex and get maybe through the woods and on his way, at the very least, to assault the militia units, since they're in a weakened state. Maybe get down to F8 or E9 with a long-term plan of moving farther down towards A10 and getting off the map. And that's exactly what I do here. Sadly, I didn't have box firepower for this particular squad, so I didn't have any weapons or anything that I could do an assault fire, which would be nice as an extra little bit of the movement, but that's okay. I'll take what I can get. He did not shoot at me, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. But unfortunately, he has a recover card waiting, and he recovers in the house, so that militia is now back at full strength. And they decide they're going to fire, because he actually failed to rally Gordov. That was not a fire, that was a draw. And Gordov ends up being suppressed. And there, I think I even kidded him, because he said something that was not repeatable for our YouTube audience. And I chided him. I said, are Canadians allowed to say that? And he said, I worked for many years in the mines. He says, I can make up all kinds of words that you've never heard of before. So I thought that was pretty funny. So he decides to draw back up. I fire at this point. I can at least perhaps inflict something on the militia. So I shoot up the house, get a very good roll, 16. But to no avail. He's in a pretty strong position in that house. And I had to make a decision at this point of, do I want to continue firing there, or is it time to get Schrader moving? Because of the double points, Schrader's worth 2 and the squad's worth 2, and with doubled, that would be 8 total points. So the incentive to move is stronger than trying to take out a single unit in that house. So he decides to discard 3 cards and draw back up, and I get Schrader moving yet again. And I wait to see if he's going to shoot. He does not shoot. Actually, I step back. He's checking line of sight. And then I did a 2-step again. And he does decide to shoot opportunity fire. So he activates everybody up there, because they are in range of Galekovich. And he's going to use crossfire for the shot. And Galekovich, where he's sitting right now, does have a shot to my target, to my location. So he gets a decent 19 shot, and sadly, both of the units would panic from that. Again, I get a really good sniper roll as sort of a backhand blow to him, and I manage to break the squad with the heavy machine gun under there, because I don't necessarily want that unit drawing a bead on Schrader and all them as they move towards the edge of the map. So, combat commander giveth and taketh away. But because I planned for such eventuality, I had a recover card. So don't leave home without it. If you're going to move, you should have a recover card with you. So as is my usual convention, I drew Schrader first. He's 10. And he did rally, got him ready, so now I've got his leadership bonus to apply to the squad. And they also were able to rally. So they are in a good spot for moving beyond this. I'm not too worried about the militia shooting on me, but more importantly, I've gotten the heavy machine gun broken, or the weapon team that would fire the heavy machine gun broken, so they cannot fire that. So I've got a temporary reprieve here. Drawing back up, he decides to move, and he's going to move that militia into play. Drawing back up. And I decide to discard a card, and he discards some cards. And I discard some cards, and he discards some cards, as you can see. But now I've got that golden move card that I need for Schrader. So indeed, I activate them, I get them moving, and he has not or decides not to take a shot because they're outside of range there, and they move completely off the map. So now I go from 13 victory points down to 5, because it is 8 total victory points, and now I've got Schrader coming in on the next time advance, which could potentially be coming pretty soon. So at this point I am breathing a little bit easier, even though, you know, that's kind of folly in Combat Commander because it is only turn 0. But we have discovered in most of our games here on the ladder that if you watch any of the playbacks from any of them, it is oftentimes rapid fire how quickly some of the triggers will come up, and I think you may see some of that here between that and of course the cycling of the cards that he has done. If I open the card window here, you can see that I'm at 5 cards, so there is about to be a time trigger coming up, and he still has 18, so they're not too far apart. So there are 2 quick time jumps coming up here. I draw back up. He decides to discard and draw back up. I continue to discard, and he plays a recover at this point to try to get those units. At the very least, he's removing the suppression marker from Gordov, and he has a better than average chance of getting that heavy machine gun squad going. So Gordov attempts. He did the Galikovich squad with them, and then he did Gordov. He also got a sniper here. So both of them rally. He's back in a decent spot here. And I'm going to discard, and I should be pretty close. Yes, I'm down to 1 card. So the very next thing that occurs here, I discard. I get my deck reset here, and I'm going to be advancing the time marker, which is going to take me in getting Schrader back. Now I had to consider where I was going to put Schrader. Do I try to utilize him more for that northern corridor through the woods, or do I just repeat what just worked for me? And of course, since I had forces down here that needed some leadership to get them moving, I decided that that's what I was going to do. I was going to bring Schrader back on to essentially his starting spot, but now he can at least get his squad and the 2 squads immediate, get them some forward progress. And I, of course, give a VP back to the defender for this. And he decides to dig in that militia that's out there in the open. And I also decide to dig in where I've got Dietl and Rettenhouse out there in the open. I had actually 2. So I started with Schrader first, and then I put the other one up there with Dietl. So I've got my leaders, even though they're on roads, they've dug some potholes in the roads to try to get the men into a safer defensive position. Okay, and we continue on after the time advance. Soviets continue to discard and draw back up, even though he does officially now have 2 orders that he can do. He's still trying to cycle through to find some useful cards, and that can happen. That is often a hamstring for the defender when you're trying to get some kind of momentum going, but you've only got 4 cards. If you have to, you really need to get rid of the 2 or 3 things that are potentially just, you know, weighing down your deck. And I had forgotten to reset my deck, so I did that there. It was not another time advance. Yeah. So I drew back, discarded some cards, drew back up. He also discarded, drew back up. And then I finally got another wonderful move card. So I'm going to activate Schrader and the 2 squads and teams around him, get them just moving. So Schrader is going to try to mimic his success before. He says, "I know the way," and he leads them onto the road here, which this was a tough call. I didn't have enough points to go into the woods. I may have, but I decided I was going to at least attempt to see what he was going to do on the road here. Now, this is always a risky venture. You other Combat Commander players are going, "What are you doing?" But I had to try and just see if I could get across the road sooner. And sure enough, he takes fire, opportunity fire, and he gets that whole unit moving, getting a not bad shot of 15, but I am completely out in the open on a road. But he gets an event, and he gets shell shock. So now he's going to draw a random event. And sure enough, the rifles, the rifle squad that's in that safe house at objective number 4 suddenly shell shocked for some reason. They heard some screaming down the road. We're not sure what happened. So I also get a matching event in my defense. Of course, it was not enough to save the unit. They broke. And I get interdiction. And I had to find a unit with less than 1 cover. And sure enough, that's going to be my unit because I'm out in the open. So I had to take it, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing about Combat Commander, that the way you read the rules is you have to do the letter of the card, not the spirit of it. People try to infer things. "Oh, no, that doesn't mean me." Yes, it does mean you. So that can go either way on this one. Then I pull yet another event. This is where it starts getting pretty rich. Not enough to save him, of course. He breaks as well. But now I get a victory point for controlling 2 objectives, which was kind of nice. So that brought it a little bit closer for me here. So my score is going to go from 6 down to 4. Or his score is going to go from 6 to 4. That's bringing the margin a little bit closer for me. So that's a nice thing. And then I start moving the other units, getting them into position. And I opt not to move the light mortar, or I move the light mortar into the foxholes. As I predicted, I was probably not going to utilize them much unless something got close enough to really lay some fire on them. But as per usual, I've moved. Now I'm going to execute that recover. See if I can recover these folks. And the squad fails. And Schrader just manages to suppress himself. So a zero-sum effect for that recover. So I was really scared about that. And the rifle squad up in the house, they attempted, and they got a time event. So not only do they fail, but we also have to move the time forward. That was not a pleasant experience to go 0 for 3 on recovery attempts. So we move on to the next time, and this is where Von Karste's and all of the new players come in. So the first thing I will do is bring them onto the map and try to figure out where I'm going to put them. I give Lefty, as the defender, he gets a VP. And I decided that I was going to bring them all kind of down here and see if I couldn't start a major kill stack with these elite rifles and that major machine, or that heavy machine gun, just having that wonderful lane of fire straight down it into the farmhouse where Galekovich is. And I was hoping to keep a good constant suppressing fire. Now, this goes against what I was saying earlier about, as the attacker, not wanting to fire very much, but this is a very potent crew, and if I could get something like a sustained fire or just something, then perhaps that could ease some of the burden off of the units trying to move up towards objective 3 again. So I place all the units here, draw back up, and I send it to him, and I'm hoping, sadly, that he doesn't have a follow-up fire, but he did. So my luck is potentially about to run out here. And as usual, he gets that whole fire group ready to go, and Combat Commander gods were smiling on me once again. So his firing units, the 2 firing machine guns, will both jam because they rolled the snake eyes. So he got a very low roll. I think it was a 9. And I think he was doing the heavy machine gun first, so that was the only unit, the only weapon that would jam on that roll, because he specified it. But I managed to pass both of them, and then he continues on with the other pieces, because at this point in the game, he's got a large fire group, and it behooves him to separate the fire into lots of small, perhaps inconsequential attacks, but there's a multiplying effect there, because it is causing me to chew up lots and lots of cards each time he does it. So you can see that's exactly what he's doing here. I'm getting low rolls. I got a very low roll there for my leader, so I decided that I had to surrender the initiative card for the first time tonight because I needed that reroll. I could afford to lose a leader. I've got Von Karcy's right behind him, but you never want to lose a leader, especially in the fact that we've got double elimination points. So I did not want to give him 4 victory points right now for that. So I gave him the initiative card, forcing a reroll. This time I get a sniper, and that sniper was close, but not helpful. And that was enough to keep my leader alive momentarily. So, literally, Schrader has dodged a bullet. And that ended that fire attack. He resets. And at that point, he had depleted his deck. You can see he ran it down. And it was just a matter of getting us moving on to time track 3. So now the pacing needs to pick up a little bit. I need to figure out how I can get more units off the board, if possible, or at least keep them from giving up easy victory points, as I've done here on this road. Potentially, if he gets another really good shot on Schrader and the squad there, then I'm really going to be hurting. But he resets his deck, gets another victory point that brings him back up to 6. And luckily I had a recover card. So hopefully this will go better than the 0 and 3 previous. Get rid of the suppression. Start with Schrader. Schrader fails again! Look at that. Because dice love me. And then, because it just keeps getting better, the time trigger came up. And wow. I mean, if I did not have bad luck, I would have no luck at all. So just 2 cards into my new reset deck, we've got a new time advance. So I have to reset the deck. We go on to time trigger number, or time space number 4. You can see how quickly they've come up now. And give him another victory point. So he's at 7. So I really got to turn on the turbo speed here. And then finally, I roll that 3rd one, and luckily the rifle squad in the house, because they didn't really need to, but they do rally. They're in a pretty good safe spot. So now I'm going to attempt to rout myself, just to see if I can get these guys away and off the road. Actually, I decided not to do that. That's right. So then at this point, I just drew up a card, and I sent it back to him. He will again lay on the fire again, trying to eliminate Schrader and company, and getting a 13, which is not bad, but being on this road is very, very difficult because it's open terrain and it's a -1. So these guys are a 6. So I need average or better to make sure that I don't lose a squad. And luckily, I get it. And luckily, Schrader gets it. So he tries another piece individually to shoot. I believe it's the light machine gun. Gets another decent roll. But I can swat that off, hopefully, keeping our heads down close to the road. And we get an event. The event is Walking Wounded. But as you'll notice, we've had a very bloodless series thus far. So there are no Walking Wounded to return. So that is a null event. I get another event. This time we get sappers, but I decide I don't want to remove that minefield. I like it where it is. So I waved that off. And then finally he decides to play a move order, moving that militia back forward and onto the road there, which I thought was an interesting choice. We'll see if that comes back to bite him. So he draws back up. I will try my third attempt at recovering these units. So I did Schrader first. Schrader did just barely rally with that offset of the road. And then, luckily, the squad did as well. So I've got them back in good order. I need to do something. So I decide to fire over their heads using von Karstes in this beautiful heavy machine gun that I've got now. So, and I also activated the squad because they are in von Karstes' range, and with Schrader's command ability, they do have range to that farmhouse as well now, because they have a range of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So I wanted to at least have 2 shots on this, perhaps as a knockout, if I got a decent one. So we'll crank up the heavy machine gun first, firing on him, and I got a very nice stout 20 roll, which anytime you can get an 18 or above in a unit in a farmhouse, then you're probably doing all right. So he rolls and gets a sniper, which does not help, but his unit is going to break, which was very nice. And then he rolls for the leader, and the leader was okay. Then I fired the second shot with Schrader squad and got a sniper. And then he decided he was going to attempt his, and got nothing for it. So I tried the route, get that unit out of there. That did not do anything. So send it back to him after drawing. And thankfully, Schrader's got a moment to breathe because they're out in the open, but that weapon squad, or the squad that has the heavy machine gun, is broken, so they're not going to be a factor. He decides to rout himself, which is always the last desperate attempt to get any kind of rear movement. So luckily, didn't do anything for him. It didn't get him out of that house, but at least that got a card out of his hand. So he decides to advance. He advances the units and just moves them out of danger for the moment into those foxholes. Draws back up, and then I fire. Once again, von Karstes will just fire on the light machine gun unit by itself. And not great, just throwing some lead downfield. I decide to move, and I get the squad moving with Schrader. And I throw some smoke grenades out just to give them a little bit of cover as Schrader follows behind. They move up the road, and what happens? Hidden wire. He suckered me into a wire trap. So he places wire there on the road and decides to take a shot using the light machine gun and the medium machine gun, or since he doesn't have range, that's not going to be a factor, but he decides to he rolls, gets a 10 there. I'm safe, but looks what happens. Yet another time trigger. So he is succeeding in what he's attempting to do in driving the time forward by causing these untimely time triggers for me. So we move the time up to spot number 5. And I'm just sitting here at this point trying to do all the mental math. What do I have to do to get close to 7 victory points on my side? I give him another victory point, so that's going to give him 8 victory points now. So it's even getting worse. And now I'm really feeling the pressure. So I play a route. And I'm just trying to get that unit that's in the foxholes. But at the very least, I'm getting that route out of my hand. Did not help. Did not do anything, but it gives me some slots for potentially something else that's useful. It ends my turn. And he just decides to, I keep saying that, Lefty draws back up without playing anything, which is always a choice. I make another rout attempt, and guess what happens? I managed to rout the unit in the foxholes, which were let's see, they were a 6, I believe? Yes, 6 with the foxholes a 9, so they have to move back 3 spaces. And he's moved them back, and I performed the time advance. Gave him another victory point, but I've got that medium machine gun well out of range now, which is great. But now he's managed to get 2 or 3 victory points in very short order, and I've got to figure out how to overcome that. At this point, I'm trying to figure out whether it's more beneficial to attack a couple of these weaker militia units or just keep pressing for the opposite side of the field. And it really much will depend on a couple of the cards that I get between now and then. So luckily I had a move card, but I'm in the wire, so I have to expend everything to get out of the wire. That's a very wasteful use for that move card, but it's all I could do. And I also, at the last time trigger, had to dissipate that smoke. Draw back up, and Lefty plays advance, and he just gets that broken unit. Clearly he doesn't have a recover card, so he gets them into the safety of the woods there, hoping for a subsequent recover card, which he does have. So now he's going to utilize that with the extra bonus from the woods cover, and he gets a very good rally roll, and they are back. So now I've got a tough field of fire to run across there with that medium machine gun on the A column. I'm not sure what I was going to do at this point. But he draws back up, and I start commencing to discard to get some useless cards out of my hand. Drawing back up, and that, for the first time, was the moment that I was expecting that he would have a hidden unit. So he rolls, and I believe he's going to get a weapon team with a light mortar. Yes, he places there in the foxholes. Not what he wanted, but he managed to get something out of it. He discards a few cards, draws back up, and then I try to move again. So get Schrader doing what Schrader does, moving forward, taking and securing objective 3 here. And the rifle squad is going to try something a little different. So they move onto the road to pick up the extra 1 point of movement, and then they decide to sweep around and come adjacent to the militia here. Now, I was wondering if at any point, clearly he did not do any opportunity fire, so I'm hoping that he doesn't have one. Because of that, I have enough movement points to move into the woods there and at least get me in a position where we can box in either the militia unit or I can try to affect the militia in the house there at objective number 1. And I also threw in some smoke grenades there as part of that move order. He was very gracious in letting me do that, even though I hit complete order. Drawing back up. And how is he going to react to this? He decides he's going to move, and he moves these units all together. And this caught me by surprise. I wasn't sure why he was doing this, why he was abandoning Objective 5, but this was a moment that I figured now he's trying to build this very large kill stack under Galekovich. So he's got a squad, he's got the militia, and the light mortar. And I suspect he was thinking I was coming in for a melee attack, but let's see how I will actually do it. So he decides to actually keep the militia there, I think. Yep, that's what he did. I discard some cards again just to try to get some options. He discards cards. It's hard to say that over and over again. He discards a bunch. There you go. I play a move order, and this is where it's going to get fun. I move that rifle unit with smoke, throw out some smoke grenades again, so we get a nice 5 hindrance there, and they move into the smoke, and then move into objective 5, which was great. So I took objective 5, which, as a reminder, that's what I need to get 4 victory points. So that's good. And right on top, we know that it's worth 2 victory points out in the open already. So that's going to take the score down to 5, because it takes 2 away from him and then gives 2 to me. So a nice 4-point swing there, which is exactly what I needed to kind of get me as close as possible. My big fear at this point is that we're going to come down to 0 VP, and I've already given him the initiative card. And as regular players know, that is the tiebreak winner, and that was weighing heavily on my mind. I really needed to do whatever I could to at least get 1 victory point on my side. Will the Combat Commander Dice Gods be favorable? We'll see. So I take objective 5, drawing back up, and then he decides he's going to move as well. And he does take the opportunity to move that militia. Now, what I think he was trying to do here was to bait me into shooting at that hex so that he would be drawing 3 cards. Because he's in a fairly secure foxhole, and he's just trying to get me to do his dirty work and to make him draw a bunch of cards to perhaps hasten the end of the game. But I'm smarter than that. I'm not going to take that bait. That's bait. I'm not going to do it. So he draws up, and this is where I made a very critical choice. I decided I'm going to move that rifle squad again. They're going to activate and then jump into the hopeful protection of the smoke there. And he decides there are mines there on the road that I missed. I just dodged right through them the last time. So I was wailing at this point. I was gnashing my teeth saying, no, I don't want mines here. And yet there they were. So he gets a mine attack on me. I'm a 6 on that road. Or I'm a 7 with no cover. And look at that. He gets a very strong 17. So I need to really hope that I can get something. Sure enough, they are going to break because they only rolled a 9. Now I'm really starting to sweat because I'm right adjacent to a very big stack, and he can take advantage of that. So I'm going to try to route myself because, as I mentioned, it's always a desperate attempt, but it's backwards movement. So I throw the route card out there, and what happens? I get exactly 7, which is a fail because I'm on the road. We're actually a 6 there, but I do get an event out of it, and that event is going to cause me to cower anyway. So 6 of one, half a dozen the other, really. And the other units out there outside of command radius also get 1. So he does a mine attack there as they step out. They continued their move, and sadly they did not make it because moving out of the mines, they got attacked again, and this time they failed. It was very bloody. So that surrendered 4 victory points to him, and that was a bad call on my part. I got greedy. I was attempting to go back for objective 1 again, and that cost me. That was an excellent play by Lefty. So I just decided to sadly lick wounds and draw back up. He advances back into that house, taking control of it again. And that gives another 4-point swing. So we're going to move all the way back up to 13. And I didn't see it. I don't see it at this point. I've got 1 time trigger left, potentially. I mean, it's sudden death at 7, so you can always go long. Let's see what the fates have in store for me. What is my fate deck going to do? So I decided, you know what? Let's just shoot. So we're going to have Schrader shoot at the militia here. See if we can't get something. We're going to throw in some extra marksmanship because they're squeezing the trigger just right. And we got a very good roll. So they're an 18 against a 6 on that road. And he flips. So that's setting things up. Maybe we can take out a militia squad here. And this time Von Karses is going to shoot directly in there. He's going to sustain that fire. And hopefully we'll get a nice event here. So I got a 20, and Diedel's already in play, so Diedel does not return. But I got a 20 on him, which was great because that was enough to break the squad with the the medium machine gun. And then for his leader, he gets a killed in action, which means he's going to have to sacrifice one of the units on his side that is broken, and he decides to take the militia that's next to Schrader there. So that gives me 4 points back. So that was nice. That was a very timely event for me. Then I just draw back up, and I'm trying to figure out what my play is going to be here, knowing that I've only got, at the very minimum here, 1 time advance. I constantly looking back at the cards. I've got 42 cards. He's got 32. And I'm just hoping that something's going to turn in my favor here. So he decides to play recover, and he does manage to recover both of the units, and he gets an entrenchment. I don't believe he actually used... Oh, he did use that up there at objective 2. Or maybe he decided to put it somewhere else. But both of the units rally. He decides to move them out of the house, back into the central foxholes there, setting up things just to keep him out of Von Karstie's firing range. That's very smart here, because now he knows what I'm trying to do, but he always has to worry about that potential for double points on the elimination. And guess who's moving again? It's Schrader. Schrader's doing this again. He decides to move forward, and he will take a shot at me because he does have line of sight through that smoke. He's got enough of a shot. So it's going to be a weak shot, but he gets a great roll. Ultimately, it's only a 12, but that's still 2 cards that I've got to draw. And guess what? The squad panics. That's unfortunate. Prevented me from moving into those woods. But I've got a recover card, and sure enough, I do get them to recover. It delays what I'm trying to do, but it doesn't ultimately cause it to fail. Soviets decide to discard a few times, and as do I. Discarding some things. He does a move order, and now I believe he has decided that he wants to start moving Gordov's units in their own flanking maneuver around. So they're going to move up into the woods and try to get around my units and see if they can perhaps get off map for some points. And I have an opportunity fire of my own. And so those machine gun units, squad right there next to Gordov, are going to sustain their fire with that machine gun and take a shot. It's not a bad shot, but it's not great. It's 14. And he rolls, getting a sniper, which doesn't help him. And then he rolls very well for Gordov. And he will take the opportunity here, since he does have box firepower, to perform an assault fire with those submachine gun squad. And so he's going to make a quick shot on my light machine gun unit there. Again, it's an 11. It doesn't help, but what it does do is it forces me to draw a card. And you guessed it, folks. I drew a time event. So I will have to advance the marker, the time marker here. We go to sudden death. Dum, dum, dum. So I perform all of the resetting of the deck actions, and the first thing I must do is draw to see if we go into sudden death. So, if I draw a 7 or less, we continue. I'm sorry, if I draw a 0 or 6, we continue. If I draw a 7 or higher, with sudden death rolls, if I draw a 0 to 6, then the game is over. If I draw a 7 or higher, then we continue. And I draw a 9, so we will continue on. And because of that, he gets another victory point. Continues moving the other units and gets them into position. Draws back up. I will match that with my own move, trying to get Schrader moving again. We'll come through and jump into the smoke there of that other little house, capture it, and see if he's going to also try an opportunity fire. But this gives me 4 victory points to bring it back down to 6. Finishing that order, he decides not to shoot at me, and I just draw back up. Gordov is going to attempt his own move, trying to press his flank. He will do his assault fire, which he's done before, doing that first this time. And he's going to use hand grenades. He's going to throw them at the light machine guns, getting a nice 16 this time. And my defense roll is enough to keep them okay. And he decides to bring some of the units away. So he has decided that it's not worth attempting to get around that flank, and he's pulled them back. Drawing back up. We had forgotten to dissipate a smoke. We did that there. And then I will now try to move Schrader off map. Let's see. Oh, nope. I now try to move Schrader into the minefield because I'm crazy. Gets a mine attack, which is fairly low. It's an 11. We get great rolls. And he also decides to throw an opportunity fire on top of that. So he's now going to shoot at me as well from adjacent with his own hand grenades. But luckily he rolled very, very low, just getting a 10. So I got a 3, which is enough to break the unit, sadly. And Schrader also. So because I had moved onto the road and the unit had broken, they still had enough movement points with Schrader and the extra point garnered by the road to get into that house, which was extremely lucky for me. But he takes another shot once I move into the house. Actually, the mine attack after I get out of the house. It's now a 13 attack. And they get cower, so any of his units not within radius are going to get suppressed. It's helpful again. I do great on my 2 defense rolls in the house, or from the mine attack. Getting another sniper didn't affect anything. And now he makes his actual shot. Now he's going to do 1 big shot, because it's opportunity fire, into that house with Schrader. And he gets a 15. So all I have to do is beat that. And I do on both accounts. And they're safe for the moment. So I take the spot, which I didn't mark here, but I will have captured that spot again and given myself some victory points. They recover. And there we go. I give it to myself now. And you'll see the points up here. That moves down to 2 Soviet victory points. So things are getting a little better. Can I do it? Can I pull it out? We'll see. Drawing back up. He draws up. I discard. He discards. And now I will fire. I will take the opportunity to... Because what I know here, because I know that I control objective 5, where I am, it's worth 4 victory points. Now I'm switching gears and trying to run out the clock. I've looked at the decks and I see that he has 3 cards remaining. And I know that when I reveal mine, I will get 4 victory points. So now I'm going to just take a low odds shot from Schrader. Right here, activating both of them, and I am going to shoot where I know he's got a stack of the squad, the team, and the leader, and just try to get him to draw those cards. And I throw in marksmanship to make it better, and some hand grenades to make it even better. And I get an incredible roll with a 22. And he's going to play concealment to try to bring it down. So that removes it, or brings it down from a 22 to a 19. And he has to make defense rolls against that. He gets, the first one passes, the second one gets an event, which then depletes his final deck, bringing us to his... so he reset the deck. And he's going to do the... at this point, he's going to do the attempt to see if sudden death occurs now on his deck. So he draws a card after he resets it. And he draws an 8. So now we continue. Gets another victory point, so that brings him up to 3. And he's going to remove the smoke there at 5 under that minefield. And he's going to dig in. So he's going to throw it up there with the foxholes at objective number 2. And then I just draw back up. He's going to attempt to recover again. He does remove those suppression markers. That's really all he was doing that for. Drawing back up. And at this point, I'm looking to see, we are both pretty thick in our cards, so it's me just hoping to do low odds attacks to hopefully pull a time trigger somewhere. So I'm going to press it here with Schrader. Actually, we'll do the move order first. We'll get von Karses to kind of bring that unit up closer so they now have a line of sight to where Golekovich is. And bring the elite rifles up with him too. They won't have a shot, but at least von Karses should have a shot there. I draw back up. He discards, draws. Now I'm going to try that fire. So I shoot at Golekovich. I'm going to throw in the sustain fire as well. And I get a 19 with a sniper. That sniper wonderfully zeroes in on that machine gun off in the distance, breaking that squad. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Not that I potentially need it. I'm not going to be running for the edge there, but it was nice to know that I had that if I needed to get out that way. And he rolls his dice. He fails on his squad. He passes with his weapon team, but then fails, I believe, with his leader. He did. Golekovich is hit. And now he is hurting a bit because I'm on the threshold here of doing another shot right from Schrader to do the elimination that I'm hoping to do. So they attack directly into the farmhouse there, or into the foxholes from the farmhouse. And they're going to throw in those wonderful hand grenades from adjacent. And I got a terrific roll, bringing it to 19. That golden 19. Let's see what the sniper does. Sniper is going to score a hit once again on Gordov up there. So that kind of nullifies his ability to keep those squads from acting in a support role. And he rolls, eliminating the squad, which is going to give me another 4 victory points. So that brings it finally to my side of the victory point track. And then he rolls for the weapon team. They pass, and Golekovich will pass. And I decide now it's time to rout. Let's see if we can rout either of the leaders. I'm not sure which one I started with, but one of them made it. One of them I guess not. They both failed. Oh, it must have done Gordov first and then Galikovich, who had a 13, so he's fine. And then I just draw back up. I managed to deplete my entire deck for the most part. And I drew up, and then the Soviets attempt to recover again, which is now dangerous because we're very late in the game, and any die trigger is more than likely going to be adverse to him. So he gets an event. He gets to interrogate. He saw all of my cards, and he had me throw away an advance card because he was quite certain that Schrader was going to potentially come in there and attack him in melee now that he's in a weakened state. But he doesn't realize that I'm attempting to just draw out the clock, run out the clock. So I'm not going to do that. And he gets his recover for his leaders. Everything's fine. He decides to fire on me in Schrader. So he does that, getting a sniper that doesn't help. And gets a 13 there. And Schrader and the squad both pass. And with that, he makes a second attack, bringing another time trigger. As I mentioned, that's a dangerous proposition at this point. So he resets his deck with a 17 potentially. He decides instead to pass the initiative to me because he doesn't want to let the clock run out with me having 1 victory point. So finally, I have secured the initiative card back. He rolls a 9 this time, giving him a 14. And I roll. And I get a field promotion for one of the units. So I decide to upgrade one of them. Don't remember which one it was, but then he draws back up and I fire. I'm going to throw in sustained fire from Von Karstes again. Same stack. And I get a 19 again. So 19 has been my lucky number tonight for this particular scenario. And he rolls, breaking the weapon team. And he also breaks Galikovich. So now I've got him pretty well where I want him. But the sad thing here is I don't have a follow-up fire card from Schrader. So this was all for naught if he's got a recover card. And I draw back up. He plays a move card. And he just wants to get them out of harm's way. So he moves out of the foxholes, hoping that I don't have a fire card. And he's very, very lucky because I didn't at this juncture. No opportunity fire. So he continues to move, or he gets that far, completes the order, and decides to fire with Gordov now. And they're going to fire a 14, and I believe he was just firing at Schrader there, and I drew the time trigger, but now I've got the initiative card. So there's nothing he can do about it. I decide to take that and advance the time marker up to time space number 9. And sure enough, once I reset my deck, I drew the final 7, which is lower than 9, thus ending the game and causing me to start breathing again because I was very, very tense under this one. It's for those of you who are not familiar with our ladder, Lefty is probably single-handedly our best player. He's got a rating which is, with 5,000 being average, he's typically up in the 6,200 range. And he has had the longest streak at the top of the ladder of 13 consecutive wins. So to score a victory on Lefty is incredibly fortunate for me. I don't know how much was luck. I don't know how much fell my way, but it was certainly very gratifying to hold out very long. So after we roll the sudden death, I would reveal that my objective down here was 4 victory points for objective 5, which I still have, and I would add that to my total to give me a final score of 5 victory points and a very hard, bitterly fought victory for the Axis side in this particular Stalingrad scenario. And that is all. So I hope you enjoyed this tonight. Again, it was an unorthodox way to play it back, but I did want to get some content for this particular scenario out this month so that you guys could see how it played out. And I would value your wonderful comments and feedback and constructive criticism or for strategy and otherwise down there in the comments section. That is what it's there for. And if you've managed to just come upon this channel and you have not ever seen any of the videos before, I've got about 3 or 4 different primary video series that I do. One for Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. The other one is for Commands and Colors Ancients. We're going through all of the scenarios for that. And I, just for free content even each and every month, I record, as you see here, the plays of our Combat Commander ladder. So it serves 2 purposes. One, you get to see what's going on, and we hope you will join us on the ladder. And otherwise, it's free content for me. But if you've not yet clicked that like and subscribe button, take a moment, do that, click the little bell for the notifications. And if you like what you see here and you've been watching for a while and you want to support monetarily, there's a little link to buy me a coffee. Certainly don't feel obligated to do that. But I hope you've enjoyed this tonight, and we cannot wait to see you on the ladder. And stay tuned for more scenarios next month. Have a good one.